you describe how your career path unfolded?
So I started my career as an EKG technician. Honestly, I didn't even know what that was when I interviewed for their job, and I was very fortunate that I was trained how to do that work. And during the course of doing my electrocardiograms, one day I got called into the chief cardiologist's office. I was a little bit afraid. I thought, oh my goodness, I must have made a mistake during that cardiogram. I hope I didn't hurt someone in doing that. And I went into his office and he said, you know what, I've been watching you and I think there's a nurse in you. I was like, what? And he said, so much so, I would like to sponsor you and pay for you to go to nursing school. And at that time, there was a program that if you went to nursing school, the hospital paid for it and you agreed to stay there and work for a year. And that was sort of a loan work back program. And to make a long story short, he was there the day I graduated and I won 2 awards. And I don't know who was prouder, him or my dad, because if you would have asked me would I have ever wanted to be a nurse, I would have said no. So I was very blessed that someone saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And that's how it all started.
While on your journey, did you ever imagine that you would become hospital president and executive vice president, chief operating officer of a large healthcare system?
So never did I ever imagine when I started out being a nurse that I would ever become an executive vice president or chief operating officer of a health system. It just was the furthest thing from my mind. You know, I really just wanted to make a difference and do good work taking care of my patients. And one day somebody said to me, there's a manager position open in our critical care unit and we think you should apply. And frankly, I said at the time, why would I want to do that? I never met a manager I really liked. Quite a chip on my shoulder there. And they said, that's exactly why you should apply. And so I did apply for that job, got that job in 1989 was my first management position, and then have just been afforded opportunities to be in a position of increasing responsibility. But they all those responsibilities had the same ultimate goal for me, to be able to make a difference just on a larger scale. So like I said, I was blessed that people saw those opportunities and pointed me in that direction. So it's been great.
Is that why you're also enjoy mentoring others?
One of the reasons I love to mentor others is because I was given the gift of somebody seeing something in me that I didn't see in myself. And so I think a good mentor is able to do that for others. And I just want to be able to give that gift back that somebody gave to me. Because if I wouldn't have had that, I would have never had the opportunity to do this and hopefully affect so many other people.
So what have been some of the biggest challenges you faced along the way?
You know, when I reflect back, some of the biggest challenges that I've had along the way are really meeting people where they are in problem solving. You know, trying to see a problem and help people come together to fix it. You know, it's always better when people can get to a solution together versus being told this is what you need to do. So I think the challenge is to learn how to listen more than just speak. Sometimes we get into a leadership position and there's so much pressure to make decisions. It's really important that we listen first and gather information and surround ourselves with really great people that can help us do amazing work. So the challenge is to make sure you're always holding yourself accountable to do that and not just being that person that makes the decision without getting good input first.
You have 2 daughters who followed in your footsteps and became nurses. Do you think that the healthcare industry has changed from when you started your career to when they were first starting out?
So I am very blessed to have not only two daughters that became nurses, but one of them married a nurse whose dad is a nurse. So there's a lot of nurses in our family. And I have to say, it's really different for them than it was for me when I first started nursing. They have much more technology available. We know so much more than we knew back then. You know, I find myself oftentimes saying, oh my goodness, be glad you didn't have to nurse back then. I mean, I remember when IV, intravenous fluid was in big glass bottles, you know, I mean, just different things that it's lovely to see how much innovation has occurred, how much advancement. So in that way, things are a lot better. I will say there's a lot more regulations, rules and regulations and documentation requirements. So that kind of makes me sad sometimes that there's that many things that they have to remember that are very different than when I practiced. So, you know, there's a mix of good and challenging. So, but it's definitely a different environment than it was 30 some years ago.
Switching gears a little bit, we're in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. How has COVID-19 reshaped healthcare?
So when we consider how COVID-19 has affected healthcare, I would say it's profoundly affected us. You know, none of us could have imagined this. There's just, there was no preparation. Here it is upon us. There was no playbook to tell us how to do it, how to respond. We had to figure it out as we went. I would say certainly we are better off today than we were back in February, beginning of March when the first case came to Carroll County. But, you know, I think in some ways it's been good. The quarantine and time at home helped us perhaps really get in touch with the simpler things and slow down a bit and enjoy family and reconnect in a different way. I will say from a healthcare perspective, it taught us that wearing masks is probably a thing of the past. I feel pretty liberated right now that I don't have one on, but I know I'm very socially distanced from you. You know, hand washing, masks, social distancing, that'll prepare us well for flu seasons to come. You know, it just, I think it really let us know that we're very vulnerable, actually. You know, we think that we have things under control, and in an instant, things can change dramatically. So I will say a benefit has really been how the healthcare community has come together and how our government has come together to help us as well. Things like telemedicine, you know, we were struggling to get that approved, and oh my goodness, overnight, we now have that option for people to be able to tap into healthcare, and that opens up endless possibilities. So, you know, COVID-19 has been very challenging for all of us, but it's also been pretty exciting for the things it has allowed us to do differently and quickly that would have maybe taken years for us to be able to do.
Switching gears again, what has been the best piece of advice you've ever received?
You know, the best piece of advice I have ever received was from a mentor of mine that said, Leslie, no matter what, never forget from whence you came. And I tell people that all the time in leadership. You know, it's really important to remember what it was like to be the person in the position that you're now leading. You know, don't forget what it's like to be that nurse at the bedside. Don't forget what it's like to be that EKG technician. Don't forget what it's like, because that's where the real work happens. And as long as I remember that that's where the real work is, that helps me be a better advocate when I'm making decisions that affect the people that are doing the real work. So, it's important to stay in touch with that, to never get too far removed from that. So how you make sure you don't forget is you constantly put yourself right back there and put yourself in touch with the people that are doing the real work each and every day, so we can be a better advocate for what they need.
And what do you think has been your best accomplishment, both personally and professionally?
When I think of my best accomplishments, professionally, I think it's the ability to have the gift of being the president of Carroll Hospital and being able to affect the quality of care that our community receives. And to be able to implement programs that our community benefits from. When I think back on that and think of all the great work that we've been able to do at Carroll over the last 20 years, I have a huge sense of gratitude that I was able to be a part of that. Personally, I'm most proud that I've been able to raise two amazing daughters that became nurses, and they can give back as well. And they have wonderful spouses and great grandbabies. So that's a lot of fun. So I'm probably most proud of that personally.
And what do you see for your future?
When I think of the future, I hope that I'm still able to continue to do great work. I've been afforded the opportunity to be the Chief Operating Officer of LifeBridge Health. It's a little scary sometimes to step away from the comfort of Carroll, but Carroll will always be one of my hospitals that reports directly to me, so I'm very comforted by that. But this gives us an opportunity to really affect the whole health system. And that's the gift I hope to be able to continue to give.
And what do you see in the future for women in healthcare?
When I look at how women are doing in healthcare, I get really encouraged. I remember when I first became a senior leader in healthcare, I was one of less than 10 in the state. And so now, several years later, there's a lot of women leading healthcare in top positions. And I'm excited about that because I don't think it's a secret women are multitaskers. I think we're naturally more comfortable with a relationship building and allowing ourselves to be a bit more vulnerable, so we can learn from one another and learn from our colleagues and be able to play that back for good decision making. So I'm excited about the acceptability of women in those topmost positions to be able to affect the care we give to our communities.